Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering from ELD's Time Vault Games Discord, as we're playing live over the internet. We've got Heather from down in Texas, Peter all the way over in England, I believe, and we have Terrible Fate up against Death and Taxes, so a real perennial legacy deck here in Death and Taxes, one everybody should be familiar with. Mother of Runes coming down, that'll serve to protect creatures that will hope to disrupt Peter's game plan. Stoneforge Mystic would have been a nice one to protect. Sadly, Thoughtseize, beyond the realm of Mother of Runes' protective powers. Arkham's Astrolabe, gonna smooth out Peter's mana base, have him draw a card, move closer toward whatever game plan he's looking to implement. I believe it's gonna have something to do with Shared Fate if it goes the distance, and Mother of Runes doesn't do a whole lot to pressure Peter. Really not worth attacking with that card. We've got a Recruiter of the Guard, which gets Force of Will, so really pumping the brakes here. Now, Recruiter itself, not so much a threat as the card that it's going to go get, likely to be a Flicker Wisp, which starts to just assemble the whole squad. So Recruiter of the Guard can get the 3/1 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, the Flicker Wisp will reset the Recruiter of the Guard in the manner of speaking, meaning you get another ETB, and it just gets out of control from there. Oko, while it won't be able to handle Mother of Runes, it will be able to make a stream of Elk, and that could be enough given the current board state. You really got to get Oko out of there, or he's just going to become an absolute nightmare over several turns. Batterskull and Stoneforge Mystic can be part of an equation to handle that. And, Heather actually not so much worried about Mother of Runes getting elked. We got a Recruiter of the Guard. And another Force of Will. So Heather going to accept the upgrade if Peter chooses to add to Mother of Runes' stat lines. Abrupt Decay gets her out of there. And now the food is upgraded and turning sideways. Elk are starting to congregate. That is not a good thing for Heather. Swords to Plowshares takes down one of those elk, but that ultimately is going to end up being card disadvantages. Peter can just continually pump out those elks at a rate of half an elk per turn, roughly speaking. Make a food, the next turn, make an elk. Of course, there are going to be some opportunities like Arkham's Astrolabe to accelerate that plan. And the exchange on Oko, rarely used. When it is, it's almost always a game-breaking play. But for the most part, Oko's last ultimate, not really the main thing. His real power is just the incredible loyalty, which is a little bit of a flavor fail if you think about it. I mean, it seems like he would not be a particularly loyal chap. He is a bit of a trickster, and instead he is going to be there for the long haul, as he is just going to keep bringing elks to the party. Rashad Port trying to restrict Peter's mana, but not likely to be super relevant. Another food. A lot of APAC. I think it's APAC. The sunflowers. It's definitely either Euro or APAC. That is like a legit question when you build Death and Taxes. What planes are you going to use? A lot of good options. Let me know in the comments what you prefer. Sort of Fire and Ice coming down. Likely to just become an elk. Actually, just Abrupt Decayed. Brutal. Additional elk. And now Heather facing down lethal, though things were grim from quite a ways back, as we are on to the next game. Peter showing strong control elements there with Abrupt Decay and Oko, Arkham's Astrolabe to smooth things out, and of course, those multiple Force of Wills. Historically, Force of Will kind of at its best when you can reload. So, an era where you could run, say, Gush in Vintage makes Force of Will incredibly strong because you're just constantly refueling. In Legacy, we saw that with Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise. That's kind of peak Force of Will utility, something that can protect your important card draw spells, but also, once you're up in card advantage, easily trade down. And Oko plays a little bit like that. While you're not recouping the cards in hand, it's such a tremendous advantage that you're generally going to be so happy to be protecting him, assuming that he actually sticks around. And probably the only drawback, I guess, would be the casting cost in some ways. It's a asset and a liability when we're talking about Oko. 3 mana means he can come down as early as turn 2 with a mana dork like Gilded Goose, but more often than not on turn 3 for control lists, as they often eschew the mana acceleration. Birds of Paradise, not really a commonly played card anymore. Still sees some play in Legacy, but it's certainly not like it was in the early days. And we have our pick of mana dorks. I mean, you have Gilded Goose, Noble Hierarchs, another very playable card. So there's no shortage of options, but it does come down on turn 3 very often, and it's vulnerable to Abrupt Decay, Skyclave Apparition, though pretty much everything in the format gets hit by that. I mean, getting above 4 mana is... I mean, you deserve to not get blown out by a Skyclave if you're casting permanents that are, 6 or 7 mana. And a fetch from Peter, grabbing Underground Sea. For a Thoughtseize, leading out the same way, seeing a Spirit of the Labyrinth on this Multi 6. And this Council's Judgment, we'll see if it sticks around. It does, perhaps signaling that Peter's going to be looking to get on that Oko train again. Spirit of the Labyrinth can be handled just by trading with an Elk. It's been said many times before, but the ability for Oko to make something an Elk and survive the crackback is just brutal. Oh, rough. Punishing Fire. And that is going to threaten some really brutal control elements here. If he has, and there it is, the Grove of the Burn Willows, and I'm not confident that Wasteland well-suited for the Volcanic. I feel like when you see the Punishing Fire, be mindful of Grove of the Burn Willows. We'll see if Heather has any more Wastelands, but Grove is going to create a really strong advantage over time, and Rashad and Port not really going to stop that. Oh good, she does have a Wasteland for it. And there's the second Grove. It's so crucial in this matchup. The ability to reuse that Punishing Fire is going to make getting any of these creatures to stick incredibly difficult. And ultimately, this will start to actually chip away at Heather's life total as well. Peter's going to be able to do essentially 1 damage a turn. Just chip away during each end step, pay a life, get that Punishing Fire back, and then throw 2 damage at Heather's face. We'll see if he starts down that path or if he's going to... No, he's going to use Abrupt Decay here. Going after the Underground Sea. Not worrying about her life total so much here. A Recruiter of the Guard. Grabbing Sanctum Prelate. And that's going to come down. Likely to prompt a Punishing Fire on the Recruiter. As the Prelate's going to be naming 2. Sanctum Prelate is a as it enters the battlefield, not when. So as not a trigger. So no chance to respond. And we've got ourselves a bit more of a game here with this Walking Chalice of the Void. We'll see how Peter can handle it. Obviously, Oko, the most likely culprit. He really does do everything that's needed of him. Handle artifacts and creatures. I mean, it's all for such short mana. And Shared Fate. Wow. We actually have Shared Fate landing. Incredible. Did not expect to see that in Legacy. And Heather actually scooping it up to Shared Fate. I was curious how that was going to go. I was really wondering how that was going to resolve over webcam as well, but I guess that's going to do. We see Armageddon in the sideboard. Heather definitely had some bombs, but this is actually incorrect up top. Peter taking that one down with 2 with Shared Fate of all things. Maybe we'll see some more of this on camera.